Welcome to this episode of Greece Chats Podcast with Tony Kariotis. I am your host, Tony Kariotis, and in today's episode, I am joined by Rose Livaditis. Rose is a Greek Citizenship Acquisition Specialist at the law offices of Pardalis and Nohavicka. Rose is joining the show today to answer all your questions when it comes to applying for Greek citizenship and everything that comes along with it. So, get your notebooks out and let's jump into this conversation with Rose. Hey, Rose.
Hi, how are you, Tony?
I'm well. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Hope your day's going well, and I'd love to jump into this conversation today. For those that don't know what we're talking about today, I have brought on Rose for a specific reason to talk about the process of acquiring your Greek dual citizenship. So, Rose, I got a ton of questions for you today.
I'm glad to answer them for you.
Amazing. Before we start, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself?
Okay, great. So I'm Rose Livaditis, and currently I'm working for Pardalis and Nohavicka, where I specialize in the Greek citizenship matters and just generally all Greek matters there. And we provide services to clients that are looking to obtain Greek citizenship, and we guide them as best as we can in order to make the process more swift and efficient.
Amazing. So let's just jump into all these questions. I've compiled questions that I get often. I compiled a few that I found online that people ask a lot, and some that I even ask. So how do I get my citizenship? No, I'm just kidding. So can you start off by an oversight of what is dual citizenship in Greece? What does it entail? Who is it for? It's not for everybody, right?
Right. And although many people may qualify, the first thing that we always look at is your eligibility. We'll go over your eligibility, the factors that will play a role in obtaining citizenship, and we'll walk through each step. So some factors are whether you have Greek lineage. That's basically the main factor. If you don't have Greek lineage, we can get into that a little bit later, but that's basically a whole other category and a different process completely. But for the ones that do have Greek descent, so you may have a Greek parent, Greek grandparents, we can help you obtain Greek citizenship. So ultimately, we're going to file an application through the Greek consulate location that you belong to, and we help you locate which consulate location we need to file through because that's also a requirement. And then we'll just prove your lineage to your Greek ancestor. So that's a simple sentence, but it's actually a little bit more difficult sometimes than it sounds. And that just goes into how quickly we can locate the records, the Greek records. Let's say I have my grandma in the Chorio. I may not be able to locate her records as easily as if I had someone, let's say, in Athens because of a variety of factors that might play a role.
Can you touch on some of the key benefits of obtaining citizenship?
Absolutely. So with Greek citizenship, well, first of all, having dual citizenship. So let's say we're talking about U.S. citizens obtaining Greek dual citizenship. Nothing is affected pertaining to your U.S. citizenship. So therefore, you can have dual in Greece and in America. And that's important because some countries may have restrictions on how many types of citizenships someone can acquire. So some of the benefits are basically traveling throughout Europe. That's one of the most common benefits of Greek citizenships. It's about 186 countries. You don't have to pay for a visa in order to access the countries. And then just zooming in to Greece specifically, first of all, you get to unlock the super rich culture of Greece. You get to stay as long as you want permanently if you'd like. You can reside there. There is no requirement to reside there. So you can just obtain your citizenship and live in America if that's what you want. So you basically unlock the rich culture of Greece. You get to access to their education system. And basically you can even work remotely there. However, if you're there working remotely, at some point in time, you may have to pay income taxes.
Okay. That sounds great and all, but I know a lot of people that go out and do this on their own run into a lot of challenges. Can you touch
Mm-hmm.
on some of the challenges or obstacles that applicants face during this? Where I get stories where people say, "Oh, I'm 2 years into the process and I'm still stuck at this part." What are these obstacles that people run into?
A couple of common obstacles that we run into are maybe a spelling discrepancy in someone's name. Sometimes when current US citizens, let's say they immigrated from Greece, they Americanize their name. This is something really common that comes up.
Hmm.
So we have Papagiannopoulos, they might have made it Pappas,
Hmm.
during the naturalization process. This will cause an issue unless we can provide legal proof of a name change. We will have to remedy this situation. Just like that, you cannot obtain citizenship. So basically, making sure that all the information aligns, birthdays, spelling of names, and so on. Another common maybe hurdle that needs to be overcome again is locating records, which our services can help you, obtain, and just generally having someone to explain the process to you, how long it's going to take, what you should expect. I feel like a lot of our clients, they feel much more confident undergoing such a long process when you have an expert. I don't want to call myself an expert, but just someone experienced in the Greek citizenship process.
Now you say the typos can be from naturalization's shrinking name like Papadopoulos to Pappas,
Hmm.
but what
Yeah.
about if it wasn't that they changed it, but for some reason one has two P's and one has one P, and that's just a
That's all.
mistake.
Exactly. That's something that needs to be corrected. And
So it can
we
be
depend.
fixed. It's not like, oh, I can't get citizenship because of this.
That's right. It can be fixed. Sometimes it's an easier fix than others. We would have to look at the case as a whole. But usually these types of issues can be fixed. It will delay the process slightly, but ultimately I think it's worth it because your goal is Greek citizenship. So just got to do what you got to do.
Um, no, for sure, you're right. Can someone like I know we claim it through ancestry, but can it be claimed through marriage?
It used to be able to be claimed through marriage. Recently, it's not as easy to claim citizenship through marriage, especially if you're not living with children in Greece. So, for US citizens wanting dual citizenship married in Greece, I would say that unless they were married a very long time ago, then currently no. For newlywed couples, it wouldn't be obtainable.
Okay. Um, Now, what about when it comes to, so if it's through ancestry, we're claiming it through a parent level, a grandparent. Can we go to
Hmm.
great grandparent?
I would say no. It's
Okay.
very rare, and usually the consulate sort of advises against that. And also, based on how old the records are in Greece, we're very, very rarely able to locate records just generally of that far back in time.
Right.
Usually, records come from remote parts of Greece, maybe little villages. There have been fires, records were destroyed. Certain municipalities were created later on, more recently, and they just don't have records of great grandparents.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So my next question then is if you're claiming it through a grandparent, but let's say your parent is not registered,
Mhm.
what then? Do you claim it through the great grandparent or do you have to get everyone in order?
Well, since you have Greek descent through your parent, it is always recommended that you go through your parent. So let's say your parent is not a Greek citizen, it's always recommended that they get Greek citizenship first and then you get it through them. And that's mainly because, first of all, the process is much more simple through a parent rather than a grandparent. When we're going through a grandparent, it's naturalization through descent with descent. So it's a different process of naturalization if you didn't have descent. But basically, we have to prove lineage all the way back to the grandparent. We have to provide additional documents, such as an FBI background check. And then we have to translate and apostille a multitude of documents, which if you were just going through your parent, we could have avoided. So the process is much longer, a little bit more complicated for clients looking to go through their grandparent. However, if that's the only option, the option exists for that purpose.
So the option does exist for, let's say, they can't be in touch with a parent, or let's say the parent has passed, but the grandparent's still
Exactly.
alive. Then you can go through the
Yes.
grandparent, through the grandparent.
And sometimes the parents are not interested in this
Right.
process.
Yeah.
So,
What if there's no interest? Then in that case, does that stop
mhm,
me, or I can go through the grandparent if the parent is not interested?
you can go. You have a right to citizenship.
Okay.
So as long as you have one Greek ancestor, it's your right to become a citizen if that's what you want to do.
Okay. All right. I think one of the most common, or this is probably the question that everyone asks: how long does this take? From the day you start and say, I want to get this thing started, is this 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Or is it somewhere in that window? Or is this, how long does this take?
You're asking me the tough questions now.
Yes.
So the timeline depends on what type of process we're going to undergo. Like I said, certain types of pathways are a little bit more complicated than other types of pathways. However, typically, and I hate to bring up COVID, but since COVID, a lot of, you know, the official offices and Greek authorities, there is a delay within applications. There's a plethora of overwhelming amount of applications currently. So all these types of factors, they play a role in how long it may take. Depending on the consulate, sometimes it takes a little bit less time. Usually it takes about 2 years. Back in the day, it took less time. But now, currently in 2023, going into 24, it's going to take about 2 years. But the faster you gather your documents and we can review them, the faster that we can gather an appointment and you can finish the process on time.
Right. Now, what about the complexity of the case? Does that play a role in the time? Like if someone's got all their ducks in order and they're handing you everything, is that going to speed
Mhm.
up that 2 year window a little bit?
It can slightly speed it up. Again, it depends on which consulate location we're applying through because there's certain areas that have a smaller Greek population
Hmm.
and also there's less applications that they're handling. So of course we can get in a few months we can have an appointment and if someone has their documents ready. But in main cities, New York, Los Angeles, and so on and so forth, I don't want to name drop any consulate locations, but they do have an overwhelming amount of applications to process. And I believe that they're also understaffed. So it's not really anyone's fault. It's just that the process takes longer depending on where you are and, what your documents look like.
Right. I want to talk a little bit now about new obligations that would come about if you were to become a citizen. For instance,
Hmm.
tax returns or military obligations. Can you start with the tax part?
Sure. So I just want to disclaim that you should always get the advice of your
For
CPA,
sure.
whether you're a Greek or a U.S. citizen. However, just some basic, tax guidelines are you can work remotely, let's say, in Greece, and let's say your job is in the U.S., you would pay U.S. taxes, but after 6 months, you'd be considered that you're living mostly in Greece, so you would have to pay Greek income taxes. And that same rule applies across the board. If you're living the majority of the time in Greece, you're going to be required to pay Greek taxes based on Greek law, and sometimes in both countries. So that all depends on what type of business you're doing and what type of taxes we're talking about. If you own property in Greece, of course, regardless of where you live, you're going to have to pay property taxes in Greece. So that's generally, how the idea of taxes goes. For the military exemptions and military service, I want to point out that a common misconception is that if someone becomes a Greek citizen for a male before 45 years old, they're automatically going to have to go serve in the Greek army, train in the Greek army, and we've had um, interested applicants tell us, well, I'm 46 years old, so I'm applying now. And that's great, and I'm glad they're starting the process. However, you don't have to wait to be 45 and above in order to apply for Greek citizenship. We can apply for a certificate of permanent residency, which basically proves that you have been living outside of Greece, either, depending on the category, either the majority of your life, your whole life, and so on. If you're a student outside of Greece, there's a variety of factors that take that play a role in your military exemption. So again, if you go to Greece though for longer than 6 months as a Greek citizen, your exemption will not be valid anymore because you have to be the majority of the year outside of Greece.
Is there other ways for exemption? Let's say it's not through residence. Are there other ways to get an exemption?
Currently, I think whether either you have to be a student or just a variety of factors that play in residency. But
Okay.
most of the US applicants already live outside of Greece. So there may be certain exceptions, but we're dealing with applicants that live in the United States.
Correct. Okay. I want to go back to the benefits of the citizenship again, and I want to talk about the benefits of travel, like the passport that comes along after you become a citizen. Can you talk about the strength of the passport? What benefits does it include?
Okay, absolutely. So the strength of a Greek passport, it gives you access to all the European countries, and not only the European countries. You get access to the UK, the US, Japan, and other countries as well. So you would have access to the Schengen zone or the Schengen area, which is basically the main 27 countries of Europe. And that makes the Greek passport ultimately a European passport, access to Europe, and it makes it very powerful. It was actually ranked number 7 this year um, on a rank of, best passports to own.
Amazing. Now, what about when it comes to education? I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but
Mhm.
can you tell me the benefits when it comes to education and holding a Greek citizenship?
Absolutely. So, Greece has great public education, even in the university level. And I would know firsthand because I attended university in Komotini. It was a wonderful experience. And being a Greek citizen allows you to do that. You would have access to all of that and more. Health benefits, healthcare benefits are also accessible if you are a Greek citizen. And just generally reconnecting with your roots, becoming one, and unifying with the Greek population and the community there. It's just a wonderful experience overall. I think it's someone would have to live and really experience this type of hospitality and just immersing themselves within the culture to fully understand the value of being a Greek citizen and being able to stay there long term, if not permanently long term. So
Can,
I would recommend it to anyone.
of course. Can you touch on the voting rights that it gives you? Are you able, as a dual citizen, to vote in Greek elections?
Yeah, dual citizens have basically the exact same rights as Greek born citizens. You would be able to vote, and you would have to uphold all your legal obligations as well as a dual citizen. So you're not exempt from the law just because you're a dual citizen. You basically have the same responsibilities as all Greek citizens. And one of the benefits of that is voting.
All right. So now what I want to ask you is, by getting Greek citizenship, does that allow me to own property in Greece, or do I not even need that? Can I go invest as a non-citizen?
You can certainly own property without being a citizen. You would have to have an AFIMI, so basically a tax ID number, and there is a legal process you have to undergo to obtain one of those numbers. But you can own property without being a citizen. However, we do recommend citizenship again, so you can stay permanently and long term and not have to really worry about the length of time that you'll be allowed in the country.
Okay. And then the last, it's not the last question, but it, so the next question that I have is, if someone was to apply, can they apply for their entire family, or does it need to be, let's say, a family of 5? Are they doing 5 different cases?
Absolutely not. There are certain scenarios where we can record everyone's birth at the same time. There are certain situations where, when the children are adults, they may have to book a separate appointment. So I would have to describe a little bit of the process. So basically, if I were to register my children as Greek citizens, I would first have to register my marriage. Once I register my marriage, I would be issued something called a family registry in Greece, or an οικογενειακή μερίδα, and that document is where I would register my children's births. If they are under the age of 18, I could probably do that all in one day. If they're adults, though, they'll probably need to come back on their own and register their own birth.
Okay. And I think this is a really important question. How important is it to have legal representation when you're going through this process?
Personally, because this is what we do, I think it's very important to have legal representation, although it's not required to be represented by a legal professional. Having someone to guide you and explain the process, review the documents, especially in more complicated cases where someone may have to overcome an obstacle. It's great that you can have a professional who's going to review your case and immediately tell you where you're going to stumble and how to resolve that issue immediately. Whereas sometimes individuals undergo the process and then along the road, they kind of get discouraged because it's a little bit complicated. So we definitely recommend, if you can hire a legal professional, it's the best option.
Yeah, I see that a lot where I'll get messages saying, like I've touched on earlier, where they're doing it on their own, they think they got it, and then a year and a half in, and they're stuck because either they can't get an appointment or they're missing a
Right.
document, and then they just say, you know what, I give up. Whereas if there
Absolutely.
was representation that knows this process inside out, they're just going to guide that person to the next step.
Exactly.
Amazing. I think we covered everything. I think the only thing left that a lot of people ask, but it's not an easy question to answer, are what are the costs and fees involved to have representation and all
Mhm.
the fees that come on all the application fees. I don't know if you want to touch on this, but I know because it's different for every case, but if you'd like to.
It is different for every case, but just generally to give an idea to everyone listening or viewing us right now, it is based on a case by case basis. So I wouldn't want to throw out a number and then that may discourage some people or encourage others. So after we review, that's why we offer a complimentary consultation. Once we review your case, we can give you a flat fee. So that's definitely something we offer, the flat fee. So there's no hidden fees. It's not an hourly rate because citizenship matters do take a very long time, and I think it wouldn't be a cost efficient for clients when they have to deal with an hourly rate. And also, let's say we are dealing with a family of five. We're, we keep that in mind and we do try to offer always a family rate. Since we're dealing with one family's documents, we don't have to gather documents multiple times. Of course, we take all of those factors into consideration and we try to be as reasonable as possible. Um, but again, if a case is more complicated, if certain individuals, maybe there's a divorce involved, and that sometimes makes the process a little bit more lengthy. That's just an example. It may incur a higher cost because there's more documents we have to translate, more documents we need to certify with an apostille, and just generally a lot more time and communication that we have to invest in this.
All right. I know that doesn't answer any questions for anyone. So I'm going to give you the hardest question of the day. What is the most expensive case an individual should anticipate? Give me a range. We need a range.
Okay, so our highest range would be the naturalization route. And again, if we have to do any separate legal process in Greece, we would quote that separately, but just for citizenship, from beginning to end, including the passports and so on, our most expensive case is probably around $4,500.
Okay. And then can we ask what the cheapest one is?
No. I'll tell you why, Tony, because It could be as low as, it depends. It depends. If someone just wants to register a marriage or a death, that's really simple. I'll charge, or if they just want a military exemption, I'll charge the minimum that I can possibly
Sure.
charge.
Okay. So the most we're spending is about 4,500 from start to finish.
Yes, and that's for more complicated naturalization cases. Not, let's say, if your parents are Greek, that doesn't apply to you. That's, a much more simpler process.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, you heard it there. These answered a bunch of your questions when it comes to getting your Greek dual citizenship. How do you get started? I have all the information in the show notes. You can head to our website, greece-media.com, and book your consultation and get the ball rolling. And I think that covers everything. And if you have Greek ancestry and you've wanted to get your citizenship, now is the time. Is it not? What do you think, Rose? Is now the time?
Absolutely. Now is the best time.
Amazing. Rose, thank you for coming on the show. This has been very informative, enlightening. I think it's going to be a good way for our listeners and people interested in applying for citizenship to have a little bit more clarity in the process. They may, after listening to this, say, "Oh, this isn't that hard." They may have made it out to be this incredibly difficult task, but if you got your paperwork in order, get representation, be a little bit patient. It could take some time, but if you have Greek ancestry and you can prove it, you're going to get it.
That's right. Absolutely.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you, Rose, again. And thank you guys for listening to this episode of Greece Chats podcast with Tony Kariotis. Today's guest was Rose Livaditis, and we will talk to you again on the next episode.